Well, looks like this just keeps happening, and people never learn. If there are any two words the
Let's do it. Goji Center's contest against their famed Indom 2.0 is coming to a close. And my submitted hybrid, Sacred Funds, despite me having dedicated a lot of effort into doing tedious engineering calculations, didn't get so much as an honorable mention, something I was hoping for. And whilst my salty ass is busy upgrading Sacred Funds into something not even Corey could defeat, while still following the rules unlike Primatus, I might as well be stupid and poke at Goji Center's Indoraptor 2.0, something I don't think anyone else has done yet. Who knows if Goji Center even ends up seeing this vid, let alone making a reaction to it, but here goes nothing. Before I begin with the actual designing part of the hybrid to counter Goji Center's Indoraptor 2.0, we need to properly assess what I'm up against. The Indoraptor 2.0, binomial name Mortalodon Anthrophagus, is a medium-sized dromaeosaur designed primarily as a sort of general-purpose stealth assassin against human targets. It was not designed to take on heavy-duty opponents like the majority of the beasts submitted for the main hybrid war. This leaves significantly fewer liberties regarding size. I know that I said that size can be an extremely overpowered trait when talking about Sioithla, but I should have specified that size is overpowered only when you have the legal room to do so. Here, I don't. Furthermore, the main application of Mortalodon Anthrophagus is in a modern warfare setting. Because of these two constraints, I can't just throw in a 100-ton sauropod at the thing and expect not to have my blood ass cheeks glued to the As a few final words for anyone else who feels like making a hybrid to counter Amethrophagus, here are a few ground rules that your hybrid must follow. Otherwise, it's straight to the Rule number 1. The hybrid must be designed and optimized for a warfare setting, preferably ground operations. This means that it must be capable of fulfilling a type of fighter class outside of being able to counter Amethrophagus. Rule number 2. Taking from the hybrid wars from both Goji Center and Goji Gai, only real organisms, extant or extinct, are permitted. No fictitious organisms except for the Jurassic Park ones. Rule number 3. In line with the rules of the Goji Center's hybrid war, the use of DNA from any of the following genera are banned. Australopithecus, Kenyanthropus, Paranthropus, Ardipithecus, Auroran, Homo, Sahelanthropus, Plesianthropus, Gracopithecus, Oreopithecus, and Oranopithecus. Basically, no human DNA. Rule number 4. Each largely functional trait must be backed by at least one genetic contributor with the exception of cosmetic traits. Rule number 5. The hybrid's weight must not exceed that of a Willys Jeep, or 1100 kilograms. Rule number 6. The hybrid's length must not exceed that of the hull of an M1 Abrams tank, or 8 meters. Rule number 7. The hybrid's typical standing height must not exceed that of a T-14 Armada tank, 3.3 meters. Rule number 8. The hybrid's wingspan, if it has any wings, must not exceed that of a Northrop F-5E Tiger II, or 8.1 meters. Rule number 9. The hybrid must be of your own design or of someone you commissioned, with said commissioned person also to be credited. With that out of the way, let's get to designing the hybrid, which I decided will be a Berserker. Like with almost any hybrid, it's wise to have a base genome. That way we can have a base template of that we can be built off of. But one issue is that typical self-preservation instincts tend not to favor Berserkers, especially outside of predatory necessity. But, like with any rule, there are exceptions. The best example are mustelids, which have consistently proven themselves as specialists in the Chihuahua doctrine. But even amongst mustelids, some perform better than others. And the best of the best is none other than the infamous honey badger. Having to share a habitat with some of the most dangerous carnivores on the planet, the honey badger has not only embraced the Chihuahua doctrine, but perfected the craft, become a master of it. Despite only weighing at around 30 pounds, they regularly bully lions, hyenas, and even leopards out of their kills. Their thick but flexible fur makes them almost impossible to pin down or to secure a chokehold, as they can just turn around and bite back. They even take down the feared black mamba, whose venom is orders of magnitude more potent than the wimpy proteases of the short-tailed shrew, taking its venom just like it had one drink too many. Their powerful claws make them a formidable force, capable of punching well above their weight class. It's even reported that the honey badger has managed to take down even something like the Black Death, aka the Cape Buffalo. They are crazy tough and just refuse to take any L's. And don't think that their berserker lifestyle makes them stupid. Oh no. One named Stoffel is to honey badgers what Ken Allen was to orangutans, constantly breaking out of his closure, with each method being weirder than the last. One time, Stoffel broke out to beef with the lions next door, who sent him to the hospital. The first thing the badger did upon being released from the hospital was escape his enclosure for a rematch with those lions. If I were sufficiently lazy, I'd just take that and be done with it. But alas, Amenthrophagus is a bit too big and well-armed for a vanilla honey badger. It'll need some upgrades. Per Go-To Center's video, Amenthrophagus weighs some 1,200 pounds and is a little over 18 feet long. Taking an animal of this size is a tall order, even for a honey badger. But there's a good way to mitigate this.
It's our old friend.
Size. However, given the design scenarios for Amenthrophagus, mobility and agility are crucial factors. So I'm not gonna absolutely bloat up the badger like I did with Sagittarius and Sioythla, because for those, I was able to get away with it due to the large wiggle room and the vague rules regarding exact size limits, especially in Sioythla's case. Here, I do not have that wiggle room, as I've stated before. Also, something I should have emphasized more in my video on Sioythla is that mitigating the agility/mobility penalties brought on by a large build is extremely tricky and requires a vast toolkit to do so. For example, Sioythla was able to get around the agility problems by employing a subframe form locomotion, large and powerful flippers, an enlarged tail, and a massive dorsal fin. I was also able to get away with the high top speed for Sioythla due to the absence of light bone stresses that constantly plague terrestrial builds. To allow for maximum mobility with an increased size, not to mention power and speed, the Eastern Black Bear was chosen. Though not as big as their grizzly cousins, usually hovering above 250 kilograms for the northern populations, they have proven themselves to be far more successful in human-inhabited areas and again cocaine. This mainly is thanks to their much more generalist diet and high mobility. These bears can also run up to 30 miles per hour. Their powerful forelimbs and special claw shape allows them to effortlessly scale trees at frightening speed. Have a badger 20 times heavier, and you get 20 times more Black Air Force energy. But there's still room for improvement in the climbing department. When it comes to common sights in the American suburbs, few are as notorious as the raccoon. These little fellas are more than happy to raid your trash can in the dead of night like the world's biggest rats. For our hybrid, the nominate subspecies will be chosen, the eastern raccoon. This is the one most people think when they hear about raccoons. They are extremely successful in urban areas, mainly due to their extremely good climbing abilities and their dexterous paws. Raccoons are also extremely intelligent, outperforming even macaques in solving lock puzzles. This will allow the hybrid to be easier to train, not that that was a necessity for the preferred berserker in the first place. All of these allow for a far more competent climber, as well as being capable of complex problem-solving abilities, which will allow them to navigate easily through challenging terrain and obstacles. Not to mention nocturnal behavior raccoons will give the hybrid a better ability to navigate in pitch black. Oh, but this intelligence would dampen the badger's aggression. No. As stated before, honey badgers on their own are very smart and pretty good at problem solving. Not to mention that otters, despite being the smartest of all mustelids, are also capable of being quite vicious. But that's for later. Though it is fun to create a hybrid specifically tailored towards taking down Amenthrophagus, it's important to remember that the hybrid still needs to be able to fulfill other functions in warfare, in this case as a berserker. Honey badgers, and mustelids in general, have anal scent glands that can emit a foul smell if threatened. And while this already fits the bill in many cases, there is a way that these glands can be upgraded to dispense the animal form of tear gas. It's none other than the skunk, which can use their anal glands to spray their chemical assault with a range of up to 4 meters. This spray is loaded with various vials, the sulfur version of alcohols, which can badly irritate mucosal tissue and other things like the thyroid and nervous system, potentially leading to a loss of consciousness.
But toxic,
I hear you say.
Would the aeropymic unit Amenthrophagus have its windpipe closed off, preventing it from inhaling the spray?
And the answer is yes. But that wasn't the point anyway, as one of the chemicals present in skunk spray, trans-2-butene-1-thiol, is known to irritate the eyes to the point of causing temporary blindness, forcing it to rely on its less precise echolocation and thermal imaging abilities. It also irritates the skin and would cause a decent amount of discomfort for M. anthrophagus, diverting some of its focus. Not only that, but the majority of chemical-aged skunk spray are colorless, which means that the Indoraptor 2.0 wouldn't realize that it was being sprayed with noxious chemicals until it was too late and it already got a whiff of the spray. And even if it does close its windpipe, the lingering droplets would force it to hold its breath for the duration of the fight, which is extremely detrimental, especially in terms of stamina. For this hybrid, I went with a Great Basin skunk, as it has proportionally longer legs, which will aid it in fast running, as well as a more robust skull, which will aid further in what comes next. Whilst designing this hybrid to counter M. anthrophagus, what proved to be the biggest challenge by far was getting past its Arapaima scales. From an engineering standpoint, the scales of the Arapaima have a very similar construction to heavy-duty bulletproof vests. A heavy-duty ceramic outer layer, followed by a flexible but tough inner layer. And from a material standpoint, the mineralized outer scales of the Arapaima are even better than what we use for bulletproof vests, thanks largely to its Bulligan microstructure, which increases impact strength as well as fatigue strength. For M. anthrophagus, the Arapaima was really the best choice given what it was used for, and I must applaud Georgie Genesis for that. Bravo. Bravo. But there is one fatal flaw in this armor, which is its thickness, which I calculated to only be a measly 6 millimeters, which is the thickness used on the lightest of bulletproof vests. Enough to withstand 9mm rounds, but that's about it. But even withstanding any rounds with skin is an impressive feat worth commending. Once again, bravo. The first step in taking on this gigantic challenge is to up the bite force. Mustelids already have a pretty strong bite for their size, but one stands out as being even better. One that is capable of cracking even ice-hardened bones and bullying bears in a way no gorilla could ever hope to. It's the Eurasian Wolverine. The bite of the Wolverine is rather poorly known, as the only estimates for it that I was able to find came from very conservative analyses based on computer models of dried skulls. No one has ever been brave or foolish enough to test the bite force on a live specimen. The dried skull estimates gave the Wolverine a bite force comparable to that of the honey badger. This is rather difficult to believe given that Wolverines have a more robust skull and a more pronounced sagittal crest, allowing more room for the adductor mandibular externus. All of these prompted me to take a higher value for the bite force quotient, which netted a bite force of up to 512 newtons. But do take this with a grain of salt, as this is slightly arbitrary. Wolverines are also more resistant to the cold, which permits combat use even in frigid environments. We already increased the bite strength, but now comes the most important modification to counter the Arapaima scales of Ortelodon anthrophagus, and this comes from one of the great rivals of the Arapaima, a giant piscivore from the Amazon rainforest.
And his name is
The giant river otter.
These monstrous mustelids are known to stack up piranhas, jump caimans, and even hunt down some adult Arapaimas. Like the Wolverine, they also have a pronounced sagittal crest to accommodate a strong bite. But what I was really after was their dentition. Being specialized to pierce the bony scales of fish, their canines are especially pointed, concentrating all that force into a tiny area and piercing the mineralized layer like a rock spike. They also have sharp, blade-like teeth that are perfect for shearing through the flexible second layer. This means that with enough floors, not even Kevlar can save you. In fact, its dentition is functionally very similar to that employed for Amphiphagus. Large, sharp canines to pierce the solid layers, and bladed teeth to tear through the flexible vests. While not quite on the same level as the precise incision capabilities of the vampire bat, the large bite force, especially with this tooth shape also including the premolars and molars, should more than make up for this. Otters are also much more aquatic thanks to their long and muscular tail, which aids the hybrid in navigating through wet environments, not to mention their webbed feet that will only be applied to the hind feet as not to restrict the effectiveness of the forelimbs. Otters are also very social and have very tight family bonds. This will make training as well as pack hunting much easier, as infants would learn quickly from those they imprint on, be it their handler or a fellow hybrid. But the biggest issue with this is the reliance on the teeth not going dull and blunt. This is not easy to maintain when you're constantly puncturing bony scales and tearing through Kevlar fibers. Same goes for the claws, which could lose their climbing grip over time, a real issue that affects aging black bears. This is likely where most of you are screaming at me to use the short-tailed shrew, and that isn't a bad idea. However, there is a better option to use than the short-tailed shrew, as it has more iron in the enamel and a better distribution of said iron. We are using Dolinosaurus, an extinct red-toothed shrew from Spain. Unlike the short-tailed shrew, Dolinosaurus had a much thicker layer of iron-reinforced enamel, as well as having the highest concentrations of iron at the outermost layers, where it mattered most. The use of this also permits better iron management in the bloodstream, which prevents iron poisoning, mostly thanks to the rapid metabolism that will further motivate the hybrid into the berserker behavior we're after. Dolinosaurus was also venomous, which will likely further boost the hybrid's venom resistance if its relatives are anything to guide by, hopefully complementing the badger's toxin resistance enough to have some resistance against the Draculin in the saliva of Anthrophagus. And no, the hybrid will not actually end up being venomous because the genetic fraction of Dolinosaurus will be too low. Also, there's no point in having a venomous bite if you're just gonna kill the person on the first encounter anyway. And with that, the genome is complete. Ladies and gentlemen, behold! The Wendigo Badger, or Mellivora pheasantini. Height, 0.7 meters, length, 3.2 meters, weight, 300 kilograms, top speed, 40 miles per hour. Genetic components, 66% Mellivora capensis capensis, 12% Ursus americanus americanus, 7% Gulo gulo gulo, 6% Procyon lothar lothar, 4% Bifidus bifidus bajor, 3% Turonura brasiliensis brasiliensis, and 2% Dolinosaurus glyphodon. It gets its common name from the feared Wendigo, reputed for its tall stature, immense speed and agility, powerful claws, sharp teeth, and unrelenting ferocity due to its insatiable appetite for human flesh, with its presence preceded by a characteristic stench of death. Sporting a bite force of over 3 kilonewtons, compared to Mortalion proboscis is calculated 2 kilonewtons, tough hide 16 millimeters thick, powerful front claws, as well as a noxious spray with a range of up to 10 meters, this compact powerhouse is more than capable of proving itself as a berserker-type hybrid. Like this, its intelligence and strong social bonds makes it deceptively easy to train, with the main and often only difficulty being its propensity for mischief. Its increased dexterity and problem-solving skills also allow it to perform more complex tasks like picking locks or infiltrating enemy bases. Capable of hunting alone or in packs, this big badger will stop at nothing until all of its enemies are dead.